cat interviews at Uber, Confluent, Indeed, and many more companies. I have seen it all. After countless hours on the other side of the table, I know exactly what top companies are looking for, especially in LLD. In this course, I'll share the insider blueprints, what to focus on, especially key design patterns, how much multi-threading, very important, counter question, traps, and how to tackle them confidently. This course is structured, practical, and tailored on what companies are looking for right now. Let's get you interview ready right now. Video we are gonna cover introduction to low level design, which is covering these three things. What is that? We will be covering what is exactly is LLD and especially how it is different from HLD. We will cover how to approach LLD problems, and whenever I say LLD problems, I am specifically referring interview space in interview scenario, how to approach any LLD problem. And lastly, we will cover some summary of interview tips. Now, before starting off, let's make sure that the like target for this video is 200 likes. Please make sure that we like it so that the videos will come up super fast. Now, LLD specifically try to focus on designing some individual components. Whenever I refer designing, it is not saying how they're interacting with multiple components, how it is interacting with different layers, caches, DBs. No, it is primarily involving some modules, classes, and some functions, some data structures, and actual code piece. This is what exactly LLD is. I will tell you in deep when we will going on to HLD, but wherever you are trying to refer code, classes, entities, functions, this is exactly what your LLD says, low level design says. Now, we will take an example of movie ticket booking system. Now, why I took this example? Because it is a very standard and common problem. It has been asked by Microsoft recently with one of my friends, and also it was asked to me in Refine. It's one of our startups. Now, obviously, whenever we say movie ticket booking system, although we will discuss entirely of how any person will approach this problem, but you will see it has various components. For example, seat selection, payment, ticket generation, all that. For each component, I will have to write a code for it. Write a code for it. And this exact thing is nothing but called as LLD, low level design. Now, whenever I'm referring any design, obviously I should be making sure that I am good with class diagrams. Not because I have to make them inside an interview. No, I should understand them easily. Again, more on class diagrams we will discuss in class relationship deep dive in the OOP section, but the class diagrams help us to figure out, okay, let's say a user will actually can have multiple tickets, and again a ticket will be for a movie, and again that movie will happen in a specific theater, and that theater is having some specific screen, and in that screen I will have some seats, and obviously when I will booking some ticket I will have to pay via some payment. So you see that in an English, if I speak multiple things, I can show them as entities, and the relationship between those entities is nothing but shown by class diagram. Why I told it right now, you might not make sense, but still, as we go and proceed forward, that everything will start making sense. Now, the biggest question is, we saw, okay, LLD is more about code, but you are saying designing and how these different components will interact. Isn't HLD also the same? Technically, you might say same, but HLD is kind of the first phase of any software development lifecycle. The second stage is nothing but LLD. Why the first stage is LLD HLD? Because HLD helps me, helps us to say, okay, from the user where he will actually start interacting. Let's say the user will interact with the API gateway where the actual request will come up. Then, because of multiple requests, it will go via some load balancer. And again, rate limiting, load balancer, everything will be in place. But then it will go to the actual service. Now, what I mean by actual service, it can be a booking service, it can be a seat. If I do a simple search for a movie, there can be multiple things. And obviously, whenever some user will come up to on our website, he will register. So I'll have to store that inside database. I have caches and all that stuff. Now, this is entire life cycle of how a user will come onto our website and will interact with the entire website, right? Obviously I will have to make sure that high user, like large number of users can actually come up, which means that I should have very high availability. I should have good consistency in terms of, let's say if someone has booked some seats, so I should not show that to other person. So all these things, more nitty-gritty of very large scale things, that comes in high level design. And again, this will be end-to-end stuff which you will have to write down, but you will never go into details of a specific service, which means a booking service. I will say, okay, there will be a booking service. I will not go into details and will not write the code portion in HLD. I'll just discuss, okay, there will be a booking service, there will be a search service, and so on and so forth. With that, you will see the flow of actual request and data. This is actually given by our HLD itself. Now, for example, if I just showcase this roughly, again, this is not the good example or the good diagram for the movie booking system, but still a very basic would look like a user can actually go and query the API gateway, and it will go via the load balancer. Again, these are integrated also many times. Then we'll actually go to the web servers. Again, these can be distributive. These can actually handle different functionalities as well. Then obviously I will have some cache in front. I will have some database as well. I can, again, there are multiple ways how we can have it. We can have parallel, we can have write through, we can have multiple ways. And again, we can integrate with some third party. So this is entirely exactly the flow for a HLD. But in LLD, what I will do, I will focus on a specific service. So obviously this web server will handle some specific service. So that specific service, it can be a booking service. I will write the code for that booking service. That is exactly what a LLD is. It will not cover, I don't want to handle CDN, caching. No, I can just imagine I have an array which will store the data. Okay, now work on it. So what LLD will do, LLD actually start handling individual services, individual features. Again, booking, processing, and multiple other steps. Now, the biggest thing is that in our LLD, I have to do some validations as well. I have some algorithms which I can use. Obviously, as I told also previously, that LLD right now is being integrated with DSA. So rather than straightforwardly asking you simple questions, you will be having obviously some data structure which is incorporated, and that also will be used. For example, in this movie ticket booking system, we have to lock seats. So I have to figure out how I will lock seats, and again, I have to store some booking information. I will store that in database. Now, in this, array will simply be pretty much suitable. Don't go on to any data access layer, which means don't make any DAO and all that stuff. You don't have that much time. Again, this is not a Spring Boot project which you are making. Make sure that you focus on your time on the important things which the interviewer wants you to do. Now, HLD will actually set the vision of the system, and LLD ensures that every feature actually implements. Again, this is more of implementation, and LLD will help ensure that things are implemented in an extensible way, that in future if any other person wants to modify or add any new functionality in the code that LLD ensures. HLD ensures that the entire system is extensible in terms of, if I want to increase the number of users, technically I should be able to handle that. LLD will say the code should be extensible in terms of feature. The code doesn't know about the users. The code can only make sure that even if it's 5 users or 10 users, they are concurrent and all that stuff. But even if there are 100k users, that is handled by HLD because it wants, bit of extensibility. LLD will say, okay, the new features, let's say right now I have movie booking system. Now let's say next time in future I have show or maybe some sport booking. So these things are possible. That is what LLD tells me, that the code should be neat and clean. Now, before we go on further, let's also discuss one thing about activity diagram. So above we saw class diagram. Now, activity diagram, again, all these diagrams, make sure that we don't write in an actual interview. I am just showing it because it helps you to figure out different diagrams in your projects which you are making. Now, always make sure that you write in the plain English. I will tell you exactly how to actually approach LLD problems as well when I will be discussing them. But in any interview, just write in the plain English what exactly the user behavior will be, right? Any user behavior, we will simply write it down. What, again, let's see what the user will do. So imagine you as a user, and then you will search for a movie. Then you will apply some filters, and I will just choose some specific movie. Then if the movie is available, for booking, then I will either be a registered user so I can log in, or if not, I can register myself, which means that my information or my preference will be stored somewhere. Now I will choose some theater, I will choose some shows, I will choose some seats, and I will do a payment, and my booking is made, and then I will get some ticket. So this is exactly how we can say that a user behavior will look like on a website. I will, in an interview, I will never make this diagram, but I will write the exact same process of interview behavior or of user behavior as a plain English. But still, it's good to know about what an activity diagram is. Now, before we go on further, let's do a quick thing that what exactly LLD should have. First thing is the requirement gathering, which is understanding the problem, and which is nothing but just go and try to make an activity diagram. Again, when I say make a diagram, always in a plain English, which means that skim through a user behavior. Whatever user will do this, then this, just write in the plain English form. Exactly what I told right now, just write in the plain English form. This is the first thing. Understanding the user requirements or the requirement gathering. For example, in this case, I will write this thing down, then I will know, okay, I will have to choose seats, I will have to do payments, I will have to make tickets, and obviously, I will handle these, seat selection while I will be choosing seats. Now, as we wrote these, entire English statement, do this, do this, do that, I will can easily grab entities out of this, and with that, my problem will be very straightforward now. Which is, if I go back, I know, okay, movie is one entity, right? I will then, user is another, theater is another, show is another, seat is another, payment is another, booking is another, ticket is another. So this is how I can go for my entities, and I will just outline all these entities which I have, and with that I will be good to put out my use cases as well. That okay, like the person will book some tickets, handle some groups, if I have multiple bookings, and if I have to cancel, or maybe do some notifications. So again, these are high level stuff which I'm telling right now. Don't worry about all this. Now, as I mentioned that there are multiple diagrams which can come up in LLD, none of them you have to make in an actual interview, but still it's good to understand about them. Class diagram, it actually help us to show different entities and their corresponding connections with them. Sequence diagram, again, shows the flow of actions. Activity diagram, again, mapping the workflow for booking and canceling seats. Technically, you don't have to worry on any of the diagrams. Just make sure that making a simple flow in an English statement, just make a flow, and with that derive out the entities which you want and put those entities. Again, with the why I'm showing you all this, because in further videos I will be showing you the class diagrams which will help you to visualize multiple things. And again, activity diagram I will never show. It's just that I will write the requirements in plain English only. Now, coming on downwards, make sure that whenever you have written the entire problem, the LLD says just to write a clean corresponding code, which means you have identified the pattern problem. Make sure that you are using the design patterns to write the corresponding code. Why they are used? They will make your code extensible and will follow the dry principle, and will follow the different design principles which we will see: solid, dry, kiss, yagni, all that we will see. But obviously we will try to leverage as many design patterns as possible. There are few which are very famous, for example factory, strategy, singleton, so we will try to make use of them. Now, implementing the code is kind of the phase of our LLD, which is kind of the hardest part because you have to do that in 45 minutes. And it is the exact same reason I was referring that please don't go on and make class diagrams and all that stuff. That's not required. Simply go and write a corresponding clean, modular, and efficient code. Whatever you can write. We will tell you what to write in the next video, but ultimately this exactly is LLD, which says that go on to the nitty-gritties of the actual use cases and grab out the entities, grab out the functions which I will be performing, use cases, functions which I will be performing, and then simply implement those. Cool. In the next video, we will see, or next now we will see how to approach any LLD problem. Although we have seen a lot of things right now, but we will see in an interview how should we approach it. Now we will see how to approach any LLD problem. We realized what LLD is. LLD is nothing but code which we are writing for different services and how they will be interacting and making that code extensible, that different services can come in future and different features can come in the service. Now for any LLD problem, we have to identify some very critical components. Why I'm saying critical? Because any movie booking system, take anyone, that will have a lot of features. You have to find the very important one for the current interview. And with that critical features, I have to start evaluating different things. I will make corresponding entities. I will try to incorporate design patterns. I will, make entities. So I'll have to put some relationship between them, and then I will do its implementation. Now, why I mentioned that design patterns, even if you never know that which one to use, no worries. I will tell you a list of some design patterns which you can incorporate literally anywhere. And it is good. Many times you will find out problems which are not that standard, in that you will be confused. So in that, make sure that you can just simply put those design patterns. It is not cramming, but it will help you to incorporate these onto literally all the problems. For example, factory, for example, strategy. These are, again, like we have singleton, factory, strategy. We have multiple such design patterns which can be used literally anywhere. We will tell you, but this is, you have to also think, purposely have to think of what design patterns can be used. Now let's see a very structured approach how to approach any LLD problem. First, as very basic, clarify the requirement and the use case. Let's see how in an interview scenario this thing will go. The interviewer very straightforwardly and vaguely will say that, okay, design XYZ. Here in this case, I have taken movie ticket booking system. Now, you are not sure what a movie booking system is, no worries. If you know anything, then tell exactly what you know, which is that just say, okay, here's my understanding of the system and what the user will do on this movie booking system. Exactly write down those steps. So what will user do? User will come onto website, he will search for some movie, and maybe he can just directly browse some theaters and then can search some movie. There can be multiple ways how we can go about it, which means a theater will have different screens. He will choose some movie, whatever is available he want to show, or like he want to watch. Then he will book some seats and he will make a payment. This is a very fast flow of any specific movie booking system which we can have. Now the thing is that keep it short, concise, and try to ask that would the interviewer want you to add any details or not. If you are sure of things that, okay, because obviously it's booking seats. Now booking can be multiple people booking it. So in these kind of scenarios, it's standard that you can just directly jump on and say that I have to handle concurrent bookings. Elsewise, the interview can also tell you that, okay, make sure that you have to focus on booking and handle the concurrent bookings. But again, this is entirely on the basis of if you have knowledge about it or not. But the first very basic thing is just walk through the user perspective use case of that specific problem. Now, the interview will say, okay, it's good. Let's move ahead. Now, before you move ahead, before you go on implementing and all that stuff, make sure that you clarify that what exactly is the interview looking for, which means that because we have multiple user, because we can have admins, we can have customers. Is the movie booking system from the admin end or from the customer end? Obviously it's from customer end, but still, as just a question you can ask. And obviously, as you mentioned, that seat availability is actually a very big concept here. So okay, how will we handle those things? And obviously, do we have to handle this payment by ourselves, or we can actually do it by third party and all that stuff? So with that, the interviewer will tell you what exactly he's looking for. So basically, you'll see the entire thing. What I'm trying to focus here is get as much information out from the interviewer without directly asking him. Just tell your thinking and then confirm. Is it okay? Is it enough? Is it overkill? Or is it too much? Or like what I have to focus on with these out of these things? So then it will say, okay, you can focus on the concurrency and let's say payment. Although he can say the payment is handled by third party, you can focus on concurrency of booking seats. So this is how you have to just get the core problem out. And with that core problem, start focusing on that. Again, I mentioned 45 minutes for a LLD round, which you are designing a problem which literally took 6 months to write. It is very big problem. You have to get the core of it out, and this is a step of how you'll get the core out by speaking out loud and writing it what exactly you know about the flow, and then by yourself trying to figure out what exactly would be the core from your end, and then confirming with the interviewer that okay, what exactly he want as a core to be written. Now, with that in mind, you have written the following things: that the user search for movies based on the location, and then again it can be user will just directly do a search and then will get the location. They get multiple things, but again, as I mentioned, this is not that much important. Now, movies will be for a screen and screen will be on a specific theater. Then seats which I will choose, I will have to lock them because as I mentioned, the interviewer wants me to focus on booking. Now please don't worry right now about everything. I'm speaking a lot of jargons. The entire concept here is that I want to make you comfortable with the process of how an interview goes. Now, obviously, the payment is what the interviewer wants me to handle rather than having a third party payment. So I will handle the payment as well. Now, he will say, okay, after I have jotted down and give a quick summary of things which I will be implementing, he will say, okay, now let's start it. Now, before we start it, obviously, we have got the flow of the customer. Again, this is the refined flow. The actual flow was this flow, but I got the refined flow and the things which I needed from the existing flow. Now, from this flow, I will get the entities out. If you see very clearly, you will realize entities are nothing but users, movies. Again, location can also be an entity. Then again, movies, screens, theaters, seats, booking, payment, booking. So by the simple English, I can figure out all the entities. Entities are nothing but user, movie, booking, booking, payment, theater, sheet, and so show. All these again, I did not do anything. I just from my English statement itself, I just derived these out. Why they are useful, you will realize just in the next moment. But again, these will be useful just so that you can jot down the main classes which will be required. Now, let's proceed forward and come on to the very core problem first. Don't focus or don't spend your time on unnecessary things. Focus on the very core problem. Now, what is the core problem? As we mentioned, the core problem is nothing but seats and booking them. But for that, let's write the core entities as well. So I will write, let's say, show. Again, what are my core entities? You can write all the entities as well. You can write all the entities. But you see so far that I have not drawn any class diagrams, nothing I have drawn. And you don't have to do that as well because I mentioned 45 minutes is very less. So time management is very important in this. And that's exactly what I'm teaching you right now. That how should you approach any problem in an interview. Now, make sure that in a very perfect world, you will be writing any specific entity or a class like this, private, final, all that, all that good stuff. But you don't have that much time that you will write this. And even if you argue that, Aryan, I have autocomplete in my things, still autocomplete, I have given literally tens and 15s of interviews. Recently, I'm saying it is not in my life. I've given this just recently itself. So I know I have given on HackerRank, QuarterPad, literally multiple things, multiple places, and literally many a time these will be very slow in terms of autocomplete as well. So make sure that you ask the interviewer that can I ignore this and focus on the core things again. But always make sure that you're communicative enough that you are telling that you are ignoring it purposely, you are ignoring it and not writing it down. Now, coming on that, obviously we will have a theater and it can have multiple screens. I can write theater and all the corresponding things which it can have, but primarily making sure that it will have screens. Again, You can also say, okay, without writing as a code, you can write it as, theater, and then just write all the corresponding variable names and functions in that also you can do. But again, that's a wastage of time. Rather, just write two things: public class, this thing, and then id, name, location, and screens. Now, you can argue that, okay, I have a screen, and that screen will have its ID name, that's okay, but it will have its seats. Now, you might argue, or you might just start thinking of Aryan, a seat can be linked to a screen. Okay, you are linking a seat to a screen, but seat should be linked to a show. Again, right now, if you don't understand this even, no worries. But all these doubts are not much concerning for this case. Again, I mentioned it's 45 minutes. You have to get it fast. So, and why I'm making you, comfortable with all these things, that, you can have some questions, some counter questions, but simply ignore these because these are not critical for you. Again, a seat technically can be linked to a show because a screen will have a seats. That's okay. But obviously, as a show will have a specific screen, and a show will be having some seats which are booked. So for one screen, I can actually run S1, S2, S3, S4, and S5, five shows. For each an individual show, I will have its own set of seats which will be booked. But again, it is not much of a concern that even if you relate with the screen and then try to relate them, or maybe, with shows. But still, that is what you will do. Then you will go on to the next entity, let's say booking, and then you will write its corresponding things. Okay, it will have its ID, user, and all that. And same way, you will go to payment. With that, again, this will take roughly 5.5 or 6 minutes. After writing all the entities, let's come on and focus on the core methods. Again, right now you wrote the core entities. Firstly, you wrote the core use case. Then you wrote core entities. Now you will write core methods. So far, you will realize that you haven't discussed or even seen some design patterns, and you will see why later on. But let's see about the core methods. Now, core method is nothing but any critical method which I will be or need to be having. In this, the core method firstly is booking a seat. And obviously, when I'm booking a seat, I will be making sure that seat can actually incur some concurrency issue. Now, you might ask, you might say, Aryan, in the first lecture itself, you are talking about concurrency and all that stuff. I am not exaggerating it, but you will see that concurrency is a very important thing. And again, we have an entire lecture for that, entire portions for it, and we will discuss. You will see, this is last lecture, which kind of is in the last thing. And after out of all these lectures, it is kind of in the very end. But still, I'm telling in the right now itself because I want to make it comfortable that an interview can go very extreme in concurrency as well, and that is the primary reason why we are using Java. We could have used C++. We have around more than 1000 videos in C++ itself for DSA, but the entire reason we choose Java was because of concurrency. You will see why and how easy it is. Now, as we move on forward, the first core method which I realized was, to do seat management, which means to lock seats and to release seats. Obviously, if I have to book some seats, I will have to lock and unlock. And that is my interviewer was also looking for, that how I will do bookings, which means obviously I have to make sure that I'm creating and canceling bookings. And again, he as an interviewer asked me to handle the concurrency. So I will tell, okay, whenever I will lock or release seats, sorry, whenever I'll book or cancel booking, I will have to lock seats whenever I'm creating any booking itself, so that two people cannot sit on the same seat. Now, this is exactly what you have written just down, that I will have all these methods which I will be implementing. But very important thing is that no matter what you are trying to implement concurrency, that's great. That's itself a very interesting big topic. But don't forget your lovely design patterns. Very important. And as I mentioned, there are some which you can use literally everywhere. For example, strategy. How I can do it, how I can use it, PMS. Again, right now I know you don't know about them. No worries, I will tell exactly everything. This is a very big lecture, a very big course, I should say. And again, you will discuss everything. If I go down, you will discuss about singleton, factory, you will discuss about strategy, everything you will discuss. So, but again, the catch here is that even if I am very eager to go on to the implementation, but I have to make sure that I will tell interviewer that okay, I can use strategy here, I can use factory here. Factory for what? Again, I will tell although later on, but factory is just to create bookings, and strategy is to have a different payment strategies which I have. I can pay via card, cash, UPI, and all that stuff. Now, are you saying, Aryan, that I have to implement all these? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm telling that discuss this. As I mentioned, that discuss everything, not necessarily code everything down. Which is you will tell, okay, I can leverage and use these design patterns, but because of time constraint, let's focus on the core functionalities. But write it down, as English, write it down that okay, I can use strategy, I can use factory. Write it down. Don't implement it, totally up to you, but at least write them down. People miss that, and again, that the if the interviewer is a bit of dumb, he might say okay, like you don't even know LLD and stuff. Now you will say that okay, this is exactly what you have done or what that you can implement. Then you will ask the interviewer, would you like to deep dive into specific functionality which you want to implement? Because ho sakta hai, there's a chance, there's a possibility that the interviewer wants you to discuss any other thing. Maybe he wants to discuss on any other interaction. Maybe he want you to focus on booking only and not payments. He want to focus on actual designs itself, how you will have those interfaces. He can be interested in anything at this point, because you have written down everything what you have seen so far. Then you will ask what he wants you to implement. Let's say he asks, okay, let's focus on locking and creating booking and obviously locking the corresponding seats. Now we will come on, and again we know that we have to focus on the core business use case. We will simply implement that and implement those corresponding methods of what, obviously locking seats. But again, locking will come later on. First will come creating booking, and while we will book seats, we'll actually see and we will lock corresponding seats. Again, all this code and stuff I will paste. You will find all this here as well, here as well. But right now, the entire essence of showing this is that you are now implementing a function. Right? Again, you might say, Aryan, you missed the design patterns, you missed the interface and all that stuff. Yes, I missed that. I missed this purposely because interviewer is not looking for that. And you have to make sure that interviewer, you are writing the exact same thing what the interviewer is looking. But design patterns is something, but design principles is something else. Design principle are, solid, try, kiss, yagni. Again, we will discuss that as well in the design principle section. All these we'll discuss. But these are still very much convenient to implement everywhere and don't need that much code. Which means this specific piece of code can be dry, can follow kiss. So this is exactly what we make sure that okay, at least design principles we are following while we are writing code. Design patterns will involve much from my end just to write things down and implement, but design principles can be pretty fast. So firstly, I will write, let's say lock seats I can write, but technically this will come. Firstly, I will have to write create booking. So if I just do a a bit, let's say if I show you, so I will write the code for create booking, and in that I will actually have to write the corresponding code for lock seats as well, locking the corresponding seats. Now this is exactly just so that I am in par, or in confirmation with the interviewer that okay, what exactly he's asking, I'm implementing that. And again, this helper functions which is being used by the existing piece of code, that is exactly what I'm writing. Now although by this point in time it will be roughly 40 minutes in an interview, and you will realize that in this 40 minutes in an interview, again you will see that exactly 40 minutes has passed. Why? Because you discussed, you have back and forth conversation about what exactly to implement. Then you had use cases of the actual user. Then you had core entities. Then you had the actual use, like actual flow. Then you had different entities and their corresponding methods. Sorry, different entities and the corresponding variables which you have. And then you went ahead and say, okay, these are the core methods which you will have. Then you discussed on the design patterns which you can incorporate. Then you implemented 2-3 methods as well, 2-3 methods as well. With this point in time, you already have passed 40 minutes, and that is the reason I told you that I just told him the design patterns. I did not implement that because I don't have time. I told him the core entities, but I did not link them properly or utilize all of them. Again, you will see that we have not even touched the payment. We have not even touched the payment interface or payment strategy. Why? Because time is not that much, right? That is one thing. Because the interviewer was looking for implementation of create booking and locking seats, and I was able to reach that, so I should be happy enough. If I would have been in those core entities and making all these stuff, and I would be having a very good kid, that would have been a big failure. So time management is very important here. Now, considering if you still have some time, make sure that you reiterate again that you could have used design patterns, you could have implemented strategy here, and again, all these will be perfect, make sense when I will be discussing all these design patterns. You will be very easily be able to tell everything. Again, code will be on your practice, but at least we'll be able to tell everything. Now, just as a cherry on top, make sure that you mention, again, I'm not saying asking you to code, just mention that you will handle exceptions easily. Because for example, if there are seats not available, so I can throw exceptions. So rather than actually printing something, I can throw an exception here. This is good strategy. This is a good production code which we can have. But again, this is something which you will do after you are done with what interviewer was demanding. And again, as we mentioned, that we will have the payment strategy. Obviously, we can have payment failure as well. So obviously, we can handle that as well. Again, all these handling portion, all that stuff will be done later on in time when my main core thing which the interviewer was looking for is done. And again, everything will be verbal. There's no time to implement it. There's no time to actually write all this stuff. So mostly thing will be verbal. And again, this is primarily for a 45 minutes round. Usually the round can be 1 hour as well. In that you can discuss more. You can implement more functions. You can implement more concrete entities, right? Lastly, the one very important thing, as I mentioned, that make sure that you demonstrate your actual approach rather than implementing everything from very scratch. That is not feasible to implement everything. So you should demonstrate the actual approach of problem solving itself. And again, as I mentioned, it is more about discussion to come up and at least jot down and make a concise problem which you can focus on. It can be big, it can be a big problem as well, because right now we were able to get to a movie booking system where we are only focusing on create booking and locking seats. But it can be a snake game where I have to implement the entire snake traversal, eating, and all that stuff. So again, different problems will require different concrete things which I should focus on. So ultimately, as a summary, we realized we need to have a systematic approach. And I told you the systematic approach is something like this, which it will literally save your time and will literally help you in your interviews. I swear, I literally, I still remember in rubric interview, I knew the problem, but I was so much into, implementing everything. I missed the concrete thing which the interviewer was looking for. And this will be your disaster if you will not, like the other YouTubers, if you will just try to implement everything what they're implementing, you will be done. You will literally learn. Again, although I will show you a very good code also, but still at the same time, I will show you how to approach it and what piece of code you can write in an interview. Now, making sure that you focus on the practical considerations, such as real life use case or the most critical piece of code, and communication is the key. No matter what, at every point in time, keep on checking with the interviewer. Are you going good? If again there are chances, if you don't reply, no worries. In that case, make sure that you are by yourself focusing on the core things and then checking on back again and again. If you don't reply, no worries at all. Just keep on going forward. Now, as I mentioned previously also, a successful LLD interview is not about creating a perfect design. Nahi. It is about that, okay, you have some structured thinking on how you can approach and complete that in a standard time. And obviously, the use case, the requirements into some concrete things which you can implement, or concrete solution which you can actually show. And also using your design principles and design patterns, and obviously writing clean code which is using these design principle itself. When I say clean is not incorporating design patterns. So design principles is dry, solid, yagni, kiss, all that. Design patterns are more of, writing extensible piece of code. But right now, at least I can write the clean code. I can use dry. Try is don't repeat yourself. So if you ask something, so we can just make it as a function. So all these at least we can incorporate in the existing piece of code. And again, making sure that no matter if I've told you anything or any solution, go ahead with what the interviewer is demanding. If you will stick on to yourself, you will die, literally die. Cool. I hope you guys got it. In the next video, we will see all the interview, you know, just final tips which we have. Now, lastly, let's summarize everything what we have seen, especially for the interview tips. If you didn't understand design principles, patterns, concurrency, forget about it. The only idea was just so that you can reach at this point and watch this video. Now, this video says that simply, for any LLD problem in an interview, they are judging that how you can concretely get to the entities, functions, and make a corresponding maintainable system. For that, you primarily will be needing design principles. Make sure that don't confuse design principles with patterns. Principles are very basic and implemented literally everywhere. Every piece of code you write will actually have a good design principles with it. Making sure that nowadays LLD problems are mix of LLD plus DSA. So DSA portion at least you will be good if you're watching RM method interview problems or DSA. Again, if not, then just come on to crash course or maybe come on to DSA sheet. Anywhere you can go and watch literally hundreds of problems for DSA. Now, making sure the very important part that at every point in time you are communicating with the interviewer that what exactly he is demanding. Now, let's start with the biggest thing which people end up doing badly. It is over engineering and focusing on entities a lot. People spend their literally half the time in entities. They never even come on to the main core functions. People just start writing. Again, obviously you cannot even draw the class diagrams, but even don't draw anything. Okay, 1:2, like 1:2 multi, don't do that, all that stuff. Entities and their core variables, that's it. Now, making sure the first very important thing, understanding the problem clearly, and if not, then communicate with the interviewer. Just get the details about everything, or maybe some edge cases or some specific behavior which the system or the person is looking for. For example, in one of my interviews, I was asked to design WhatsApp. Now, for me, WhatsApp was more of a messaging thing, but the interviewer was looking for a group messaging specifically, and he wanted to go deep dive into group messaging and handling concurrency in group messaging itself. So he didn't focus on call, he didn't focus on chat, individual chat, no. He was focusing only on group messaging. No icon update, no profile picture update, no DP view, no active, no nothing of that sort. No, he was only looking for group messaging feature. So making sure that you understand the problem. Again, although the interviewer mentioned that design WhatsApp like system, but getting to the actual requirement and breaking it down is very important. So that's the next thing. Breaking down to the actual requirements, what is the key responsibility or relationship which you are looking for. Now, as I mentioned, that focus on design principles a lot. You should know them no matter what. Specifically, dry case are very much required. Solid is also required, although you will see many a times this is asked verbally. What exactly is solid? Again, no worries. I will literally tell you in such a way that you will remember solid forever. And again, when I say remember, if you know that in our childhood we had remembered a periodic table, right? The same way I'll literally make you remember this. Although it's not something which you cramp up, but people usually end up forgetting about the full form and what they do. So yeah, for that reason, I will just help you remember it. Now, making sure that even if you're not implementing the design patterns, but still you mention them, that how you can leverage these design patterns in the correct interview. Again, I mentioned even if you don't implement them, but still mentioning is very important. Again, as I mentioned previously, there are a few which are used literally everywhere, which is singleton, factory, strategy, observer is also used many times. So making sure that you know the most important ones. And again, if you come to the website, you will realize that when we have structured it, We have structured in such a way that the top ones are the most important ones. So for creational, these ones are most important ones. For behavioral, these ones are most important ones. For structural, these ones are most important ones. Right? That is again, although these are also used, but not most important. So this is, you will see that everything is so structured and only focus on the important portion ever. Now, making sure that you are balancing simplicity with extensibility, because extensibility, you have to keep code extensible. That's the entire use case of LLD, but keeping it simple as well. Don't complicate that you are stuck at one piece of code. And again, very important is time management. Like literally for me, when I was starting off, one of the hardest thing was time management, and thus I used to be scared so much of LLD. But then when I realized the interview is not looking for everything, which every other YouTuber will tell you, okay, just do this, do this, do this. No, they're looking for some specific thing, and approaching that thing itself is what you will learn from this video. Now, making sure that for LLD, even if you are SD3 itself, make sure that you are brushing up your DSA skills, because right now, because people are trying to cheat in DSA, they're mixing LLD plus DSA. And that is what I'm guessing, that after 1 year or after 1.5 years, this is exactly how DSA problems will be asked, mixing of LLD and DSA. Now, making sure that communication, again, this is, I guess, 8 9 time I had told you, it is very important. And making sure that if there's some DSA problem, then obviously it will have some edge cases which you have to handle. And scalability is nothing but that in terms of extensibility, it's more of that, okay, right now if I have movie booking, in future I could have show booking, or any concert or sports booking, or let's say if I have payment, so I can have any other payment in future. So these kind of extensibility should be incorporated in your existing code, and this is possible with the help of design patterns. And this you can make sure that you are handling with the help of design patterns. Again, not necessarily implementing them, but at least telling the interview that okay, you can do it. Now, clean code, which is nothing but by implementing the or using the try principles, or I should say design principles, you will be able to get it, like try, case, Yagni, all that stuff. You will be able to implement clean modular code. Now, see that, make sure to practice with the real world examples. What I mean by that is that for LLD and HLD, mostly, if not mostly, for HLD, either the question asked will be, for the existing firm, which means the firm which is your firm, or the firm which you are interviewing for, or some standard question. Usually it will be either their work or your work HLD problems are based on. For LLD problems, it will be more of standard problem which will involve some sort of DSA or some sort of logic based on the company. If they want to focus on multi-threading, concurrency, they might ask web crawler, your movie booking system, and all these multi-threading stuff. If they're focusing on DSA plus LLD, then they'll ask snake game, chess game, all these stuff. So this is how you can actually see that focusing on actual real world examples, web crawler, or simple movie booking system, a chess game, or any sort of board game, or there are multiple problems which you can actually focus on for this LLD itself. Final last thing is that LLD will actually help you to write simple, functional, and adaptable piece of code which can be extensible and clean as well. I hope you guys got the entire essence of what points to make sure for LLD. Again, I try to make sure that I'm specifically spending enough time with you for LLD, and especially for you to let know that how to approach any interview. Let's see the next video. In that, we'll start off with oops. Why? Because they are very basic and we'll cover them very fast. It's just that they're important in terms of I will teach you generics, I'll teach you class diagram, I'll teach you different stuff along with the interview question which were asked to me as well in oops itself, which is technically not covered anywhere. Bye bye, take care.